Hi there, it's John and welcome to Cycling on a Shoestring. We're going to do something a little bit different today. It doesn't involve a review of clothing, but this could save you a lot of money over time, and I think it's becoming a lost art. It involves fixing this, using this, and one of these. Welcome to this episode, and we're going to do something a little bit different this time. It's kind of a lost art. It's patching a tube, but it's something you need to know how to do if you're going to be serious about riding. Let's face it, if you're out on a bike ride and you get a flat, you're going to have a tube with you probably to replace it, but I've got two flats on the same ride, and that means you're going to have to patch it while you're on the fly and out on the road, unless you've got somebody who's going to pick you up. And I think this is becoming a lost art. Very often people get flats these days. They go to their bike shop, they get it switched out, and it costs about 20 bucks to do it. Tube is about $6.95, and when it comes to a patch kit, you can buy one of these for $3 or $4. It's got about 10 different patches in there, and if you add it up over time, 20 bucks a shot, $200 you can save. So we're going to do that today. We're going to run through the whole process and show you how to patch a tube and save yourself a lot of money on this edition of Cycling on a Shoestring. Let's get this procedure started, and right behind me here you can see my cat Blue. He's kind of curious as to what I'm doing. He's not very old and he might be poking his nose around here just a little bit. What do you need to do this process? Well, here's a few things. First off, you're going to need some tire levers. These are Park Tool tire levers. They're a little bit more expensive, a little stiffer, a little better made. This came with a complete tool kit that I purchased for my bikes, but you don't need this. These ones, I got these with the patch kit. They're not as stiff, but they will work in a pinch, so really no problem at all. If you get something like this, you can save yourself a couple extra bucks if you happen to find one of those patch kits that has tire levers in it already. You're also going to need a patch kit. This is also a Park Tool patch kit. It comes with a number of different things in here. You've got your glue, you've got a little bit of sandpaper to rough up the tube. We'll show you that in just a minute to make the patch stick a little bit better. And this one comes with these tiny little patches, and you can see this one right here. It's maybe the size of a nickel, and this is good for a road bike. Anything larger than that and it's not likely going to work. As a matter of fact, I've got one here that is much different size to that and much bigger, and I'll show that to you right now and give you an idea of how big they can get. This one here compared to this one here, it's thicker, it's too large, and on a road bike tube, which is very, very narrow, there's no way you're going to use this. So you want to look for this if you're using a road bike. This would be good for a mountain bike, okay, if you got a hole in it, and probably for a pinch flat as well. Okay, so one other bit of advice for you. I never ever use a patch kit in the spring. If it's been opened the previous summer, I never use it in the spring because the glue will dry out. If you've opened it, it will dry out. The last thing you want to do is get out on the road and find that your glue's dried up, and then you're, well, to put it bluntly, you're screwed. So always buy new patch kits. I'm always upgrading them and updating them. If it hasn't been opened, you're fine. But once you open it up, they're going to dry out and you're going to end up with dust inside. So let's get down to this process. Let's get this tire off of this rim. Now, I like to start opposite to the valve stem. You can see it right there. And I like to start adjacent to one of the spokes. So let's do that right now. And I'll show you how this process works. You want to get it underneath the tire, but not both sides, okay? And then that little hook is on there, and that hook hooks right onto the spoke there. Now your hand's free. You've got that tire pulled off the rim in that spot, but you don't have to hold on to it. So that's what those hooks are for on there. And then you want to go down just a little bit, not too far, and you want to get under the tire again. Now it's going to take, it can take a little bit of work, but you want to get underneath that tire, but not pull both sides over. So now I've got it underneath, and I've got my hand here. Now I can kind of slide it along underneath. I might have to pry it up a little bit further along. Once you get it to a certain amount, it's going to start coming off, and there we go. Now we're starting to get the tire off the rim. And it's coming off not too badly here. Now, when it comes to road tires, they can be really, really tight. I've got some gator skins on my other bike that I ride out here in Alberta because we put a lot of gravel down on the road and I end up with a lot of flats. They can be very, very difficult to put on. They can be hard to get off as well because they're very, very tight. So now we've got the tire off on one side. Now on a road bike, sometimes you'll have these little rings on here. I need to get that off, and it's on there really tight. I tightened it far, far too much. I think I should be able to get it off. There we go. Okay, so we're getting it off. We'll take that little ring off there, and then you can pull the tube out. And you can pull it out all the way around, just like that. All right. And you got the tube out. There you go. Now you can leave the tire right on the rim. Don't take it off, just leave it on where it is. It's perfectly fine where it is. So now we've got the tire off, and we're going to get a little bit closer in. We're going to patch up this tube, and actually this is the tube that was in here. I've got another one that's got a hole in it, so we're just going to replace it just for the purpose of showing you how to do this. But let's get a little bit closer up, and we'll show you how to patch up a hole on a tube so you can save yourself an extra amount of money. So we're ready to go and put a patch on this tube. Now when it came to this particular hole on this tube, it was very hard to find. It was a slow leak. Now very often you're going to have a puncture in there. You're going to take the tube out of your tire. You're going to pump it up a little bit, and you're going to be able to hear the air coming out of the tire, likely see the hole, and you'll be able to feel it as well if you rub your hand over top of it. This was an incredibly slow leak. So what I had to do with this one is I had to put some water in my sink upstairs, pump it up, and then run it through the water, and I was able to find that leak just by seeing the bubbles come out of it. It was a slow one, and sometimes it's going to be like that. Now I've marked the tube. You probably can't see the X. I marked it with a Sharpie, something you won't be able to do if you're out on the road. You have to keep your eye on that hole, maybe keep your thumb over it if you find it, but I've marked it so that I can see it there. We've got everything we need here. We've got our sandpaper to rough up the rubber. I'll do that in just a second. We've got our glue ready to go, and again, don't use your glue the following year if you opened it the previous year, because it's likely to be dry. And also, it does have usually has a little bit of foil over that hole. In the top of the cap, there's a little pokey thing there you use just to poke that hole in there so you can get the glue out. But first off, what we're going to do is we're going to rough up the rubber a little bit, and what this does, it makes it so that the patch will stick a little bit better, that roughing up there. We're just going to rough it up a little bit with the sandpaper. It doesn't damage the tube all that much. It's not going to put a hole in it, but it is going to make it so that that patch sticks on there a little bit better. So that's about all you need to do. Very often you're going to get one of these. It's going to be metal. You'll find it's metal. It almost looks like a cheese grater, but this is, basically some sandpaper. Now we're going to take our glue, and we're going to put a little bit of glue on there. Now you can be liberal with this. You don't have to put too little on there. In fact, it's better if you put a little bit more. It's going to dry up, and you want to make sure that the glue on there is at least as large as the patch you're putting on, okay? Because you want to make sure you get all of the edges of the patch on there. And you just rub it around so there's plenty of space, and you can see I've got lots and lots of glue on there, and it's certainly enough to make sure that the patch is going to go on, and it's going to make sure that the patch has got enough glue underneath it so that all the edges are going to stick. So what we're going to do now is, this is contact glue. We're going to put the top back on it. This is contact cement basically. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that it dries. Don't put the patch on right away. You want to put it on so that it dries. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to blow on this for a few minutes, let it dry up, and then we'll come back and we'll put the patch on. I think we've waited plenty of time to let that glue dry. Again, you want it to be completely dry. Now you've got your patch here, and it comes with a little bit of cellophane on the top of the patch, and on the bottom it's got this foil. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to grab a hold of the cellophane and just peel that patch off there, and the patch already has some glue on the bottom, so you don't have to worry about putting any glue on there. It's going to be just fine like that. And then you want to take that patch, and you want to, I can see where my little cross is on there, where that hole would be. You want to make sure you get that patch right over top, right over the hole, center it on there, and stick it on there. Now, what I like to do generally is I'll take my patch kit, and I'll just push down on there to make sure that all the edges are pushed down. Now you can do this with your thumb, but I find this works pretty good, and it helps to make that cellophane pop off there a little bit as well. But I generally like to do that to make sure it's stuck. And again, it's contact cement, so it's going to stick on there pretty much immediately, but you want to make sure you get all those edges pushed down nicely. And once it's on there, if you've done it right, it is not going to come off. Now, it does have that cellophane on there. I would suggest you not pull it off right now. It doesn't matter if it goes into your tire, it's going to eventually slough off anyway. But if you start pulling on that, there's a good chance you're going to pull up the edge and then you might end up with a bad seal. But that's basically all you have to do. The patch is on there, it's ready to go, and on this particular tube, I've got 4 patches, I think 5 patches already. 20 bucks to change a tube in your tire if you go to your bike shop. I've just saved about $100, and all it cost me was a patch kit, a little bit of knowledge, and a bit of time. We're getting down to the final process now, and what we want to do is we want to put a little bit of air in the tube so that we can end up putting it into the tire and onto the rim. Now, you have to know what kind of valve stem you have. This is called a Presta valve. This is generally on a little higher end bikes. It's got this little stem on the bottom here. You can see that you have to loosen and then you tighten it up to keep the air in. The other types are called Schrader valves. They're on generally bikes you might buy at your local department store. Same type of valve you find on your car. This pump can do both. If you look at it, you can see it's got 2 holes there. So the bottom hole is the one I use. It's a little bit smaller. I'll stick it in there. And you want to put a little bit of air in your tube, not a lot, but just enough so that you can stuff it into your tire. That's about enough. That's about all I need right now. So we'll pop it off. We'll tighten up that little stem on the end there, and then we'll move the pump out of the way. Now, this is a very important step that a lot of people forget. Now the question is, why do you have a flat in the first place? It could be because you have a puncture. Maybe you ran over a nail, maybe you ran over some glass, maybe you ran over something that has punctured through your tire into your tube. My question is it still in your tire? Do you know that? Because what happens if you put the tube back in, you put it back on your bike, and you haven't removed what's in your tire that punctured your tube in the first place. So what you want to do very carefully is go around the inside of your tire. And I'll tell you how many times I've got a little bit of a poke, but you might find what punctured your tire and your tube in the very first place. You want to remove that, so you don't end up with another flat and you're starting all over again from scratch. Okay, so there's nothing in there right now, but do not forget to do that, because that's an awful thing to find out that all of a sudden you put your tire back on and you hear all the air's out of it again, you've punctured once again. So now what we want to do is we want to find where we put the valve stem in, and generally on most rims you're going to find it opposite to the label. It says Mavic down here, so if I look right across on the other side, should be right in here. And there it is right there. Okay, so it is exactly on the opposite side, and we're going to put the valve stem through the valve hole, and you want to make sure it's at 90 degrees. You don't want it on an angle, because if you get it on an angle, you may end up with a valve stem puncture, and then you might as well forget it. You're not going to be able to patch that. Can't do it. So you want to push the tube back into the tire all the way around. If you find there's too much air, just take a little bit out. And I'll probably take a little bit out as I put this tire back on this rim, but it fits in there nicely, no problem. And I think there is a little bit too much air, so I'll take a little bit out of there, because the last thing you want to do is you don't want to pinch the tube in between the tire and the rim, and then you can end up with it popping, and it explodes quite loudly. Okay, we'll see how these tires work out. I have some tires that are incredibly hard to put on rims. You'll find mountain bike tires are a little bit easier, but I generally like to start across from the valve stem and work my way around the tire, and just a little bit at a time. You can work both sides at the same time, but this generally will work. I'll come around here like this. Keep pushing the tube in there. There's a little bit of air in there still. Keep putting it in, and as it gets around, it's going to get harder and harder to put on the rim. We'll go back over here. A little bit more, a little bit more. It's been a while since I've had these tires off these rims. We're going to see how it goes on, but it's getting harder now. So what you want to do is use a little bit of leverage, and I like to roll. Use the inside of your finger on that, and it'll roll in there. And you can see we're getting closer and closer and closer, and voila. Done. All you got to do is pump it up. Make sure you pump it up to the recommended pressure, and you're on your way. It didn't take very long to do. Pretty easy process, and it can save you a lot of money. I hope that was helpful. I know there's a lot of different videos online that do the same thing, but I cannot stress enough how important it is for you to learn how to do that if you want to be self-sufficient out on the trails. And I can't tell you how many times I've stopped and helped people fix their tires. I've patched a lot of tubes over the years, and the people are very appreciative when you do that for them. Now, there is something I do want to point out here that I think is very important. I'm a strong believer in independent bike dealers. They are the people in your town or your city that can help you when you have real problems with your bike. They are a wealth of knowledge, they have great deals, they have great bikes, and they can help you when you really need it. There are a lot of things that I fix on my bikes, but some things I have to go to the bike dealer with. So it's good to get to know them. It's good to go over and spend your money at those stores. And of course, sometimes you're going to find a great deal there as well. They've got great deals all the time at your independent bike dealer. I'm a strong supporter of them. Two of my very good friends own bike shops. But of course, we're always trying to save money here, and if you know how to use a patch kit, use some tire levers, use your brain, you can save yourself a lot of money if you're cycling on a shoestring.